This is the real sign of summer in Massachusetts this year, parched lawns. Take a look at this neighborhood in Abington. It's one of the many communities across the state with watering restrictions due to the drought. Right on the front of the town's homepage, residents are told they can only use a handheld hose every other day, and they're feeling the effect.
Would you say, is this like one of the worst years you've seen in terms of, right here? In terms of the
dryness, the summer, yes. The grasses are basically brown, hopefully dormant. Newer grasses, unfortunately, for some of the folks that just put them in, probably won't survive. But this has been a pretty brutal summer.
Today, the U.S. Drought Monitor upgraded parts of Middlesex and Essex County to extreme. It's that red area you see just northwest of Boston. It's the first time since this agency started releasing this drought map in '99 that an area of Massachusetts has been this dry. In Lawrence, for example, right in the middle of that zone, they're down more than 8 inches of rain over the last 6 months from what they would get on average. In Boston, the rain deficit stands at just over 5 inches. Today in Brookline, farmers unloaded their locally grown produce at the farmers market. Kate Stillman of Stillman's Farm in New Braintree told us yields are down and many of the fruits and vegetables are smaller than normal.
In general, probably straight across the board, you're looking at 3-4 times the cost added on to our food because of the labor value. We spend every day, it's a trade-off. Do we spend our labor watering stuff to try to see if we can get the harvest in, or do we spend the day with our labor picking, which is normally what we would be doing this time of year. It's all hands on deck, usually in August, picking.
Joining me now for more on how everything is being affected by the lack of rain are Jonathan Yo. He's Director of Water Supply Protection at the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation. Jonathan, thanks for being here. And Adriel Sue Flanders of Sienna Farms in Sudbury. Good to see you as well. I don't know what any of these terms mean. Yeah. I read today 92% of Massachusetts experiencing severe or moderate drought. Right. What does that mean in English? What is that in real terms?
Well, it really hasn't rained much at all for several months over much of the state, and it's really centered around the central part of the state for the last 3 months. It's now expanded into the Connecticut River Valley, the Berkshires, and now on to Cape Cod. But it is centered around the middle part of the state where farms and other...
What's extreme drought? Like we just said, the Merrimack Valley and Lawrence. What's that? I mean, it's worse, but what does that mean?
So it means groundwater is very low, wells are low, reservoirs have gone down pretty far, and streams are beginning to dry up across all of these areas.
And is this aberrational or is this cyclical? I mean, how bad is this in the grand scheme of things?
Every 10 to 15 years we'll see something like this.
Okay, let's talk about the impact. First of all, what do you do? I know you have CSAs, farmers markets. You also supply a ton of restaurants, including the Great Oleana in my neighborhood. That's essentially your business, right?
Yeah, we're a vegetable farm on 75 acres of land in Sudbury.
So what's it mean for you? What's this all meant for you?
Well, I think just what we were talking about. We're in such a deficit with rain right now, so that it's affecting the crops that we would be expecting to have had all summer long.
Does affecting mean they don't even appear, or they're, as Kate Stillman just said, much smaller? I mean,
for some of those things, definitely. We're dealing with much smaller crops. Some of the things we've lost completely. And I think the worst is yet to come in some ways. It's affecting, we just have a huge backup of plants, storage crops for the fall and winter that we're unable to plant.
One of the things, I'm not a farmer. I know that may shock you, but I'm not a farmer. But most of the things that upset me, I have some control over. How psychologically difficult is it to do what you do when it seems to me, at least, you have no control over these conditions? You just sit there, wake up, pray that something good's going to happen. I mean, how hard is that? I'm serious.
Definitely. I think, part of it is what you get for signing up to be a farmer in some ways. Always the weather is something you can't control. But I think in a season like this, when we're dealing with an extreme drought, it just adds added level of psychological stress, uncertainty.
For employees, leaders, everybody, right?
Absolutely. Uncertainty about that, uncertainty for our customers, our restaurants.
What does it mean for the restaurants, for example? Does the menu smaller? Is stuff get more expensive? What happens in real
I think
terms?
We're just unable to offer the products that we normally would be selling to them, that they need to cook in order to offer their menus during the season. We don't have those.
So what are the kind of impacts? Other than other than like this isn't horrible. It's horrible, obviously, for people's livelihoods, the economy, for people who depend upon them. What are the kinds of negative impacts are we experiencing? I don't mean just minor inconvenience. I'm sorry people can't play golf, but I feel bad for the people who work there, but let them go to a miniature, do a putting thing or something. But other than that, what kinds of real impacts?
So there are ecological impacts to streams in particular. So fish and wildlife are really struggling in many of these streams. Water suppliers are having some challenges trying to manage demand and supply. and many of them have gone to water use restrictions, which is not always an easy thing for them to implement.
How many, 100 communities have something they're
150,
mandatory?
yeah.
How many are mandatory?
Oh, I'd say at least half of those are mandatory, and it's becoming, every week more and more.
So when you mentioned these impacts, like on streams and stuff, how long does it take to reverse themselves? Let's assume something good happened at the end of the season. I'm going to ask you in a minute if it's going to happen.
Right.
Does it reverse itself? It doesn't do it overnight.
It does not.
So what's this mean? Like if everything got better tomorrow, at least in terms of the immediacy of the thing, how long would it be till we're back to what normal used to be?
Well, it would take months to get back to normal for water suppliers. We need the groundwater to replenish, the streams to come back up. But things like wildlife impacts can take years for it to recover.
Years.
Yeah.
I always I'm weather obsessed, I should say. I think actually weather on most news stations is the highest rated part of the show, even in a place like New England. If you know in advance, if you have a pretty good idea in your business what the season's going to be like if they told you in April this is going to be a really dry summer, are you able to do anything to make your life less miserable and make your work more productive than it would be if it surprised you?
There are definitely limits to what we can do, just in terms of...
Like what can you do?
Yeah, so we can invest more in irrigation infrastructure, and we've added a lot of drip tape, overhead irrigation, sprinklers, things like that, and we've tapped into some sources of water, like wells, surface water ponds.
Can you grow other things that are less water dependent? I know everything is water dependent, but less water dependent?
We definitely can, but right now we farm in about 6 different areas around Sudbury, and in several of those we don't have any water source. So if we don't get any rain, or we get 1 inch of rain like we have had this summer over the span of 3 or 4 months, it's just such a huge deficit that we can't even plant anything there. We can't seed in there.
How are you smiling? I mean, you're really an upbeat kind of character. I'm serious. This is horrible. So do you have any decent predictions for the future? And I know you're not a meteorologist, but I'm sure you monitor this stuff.
Yes, we do.
What's the expectation?
The expectation is continued dry conditions, unfortunately.
For the rest of the summer?
Well, I think over the next week we might see some spotty thunderstorms, but over the next, I think it's 30 to 60 days, we're looking at very dry conditions. I hope they're wrong.
And we're in such a deficit right now also that it will take more than just a little bit of rain. Yesterday it was a great rainy day. We got about 1/3 of an inch, and it's doing nothing. Is your business
at risk? I mean, is it long-term at risk, or you just suffer through a horrible season and then you come back next season?
Well, I think definitely farms in general in Massachusetts are at risk in any situation like this where there's an extreme drought. But we hope that through the support of our customers, our CSA members, our restaurants, some of our crops are doing really well. The hot crops like tomatoes, eggplant, peppers that we've been able to irrigate are thriving in the full sun, but other things really are lacking. And
we wish you water, all of you. Jonathan, thanks so much for being here. Pleasure.
Thank you.
Be well. Good luck to you too.